Evening
to help people
3.
discover the techniques of meditation.
Meditation 1.
Someone gets to be the rain, someone gets to be the wind, and another gets to be the ethereal voice that echoes
In a something gamified world. One alarming consequence of these tendencies is the self-optimization as digital imperative of everyday life.
Of their collective inner symphony. In all of their four directions, with creative meditation practices for the mind, the heart, the breath, and the body. Users came together in a collective experience, combining their efforts to light up the bio with beautiful, synchronous vibrations. High-powered computer graphics that now enable VR applications have allowed us to build our immersive lasting experiences that take humans to a whole new level.
In an act of resistance based on information and communication among researchers of different skills, brainwave analysis tools are reverse engineered into. Yes, into what? Into what are they reverse engineered? The topic of our PEEK project, just launched in May, of NEUROMATIC GAME ART, is critical play with interfaces. It puts a focus also on the modification, on the reverse engineering of devices that are made for measurement, that are made for self-optimization, that are made for a personal control of your own inner self. And what you see in the background is the neuromatic brainwave broadcast channel. It is our starting point for the discursive reflection evening we have today with you. This broadcast series started in March. We're setting it up, Stefan Glasauer and me, in a spontaneous reaction to the situation that we could not launch installations that we were originally planning. And so in a performative setting, as you can see, we had a daily broadcast over the first 2 weeks, then a weekly broadcast. And so it became a duration performance. We just come out now this evening. We had 45 minutes from 7 to 7:45 before this discussion right now. And this is very important because in this uncanning of uncertainty, as we are discussing and experiencing it right now, such a duration performance also gives a certainty how we can communicate with our visitors, players via the YouTube chat. It is a creative, expressive potential of the bandwidth spectrum that we are using. You see in a quite complex setting here that we are using for setting up an installation online with a hybrid performative interface. That was the topic of our discourse. And I want to go deeper with you today into the reflection of this setting, of this hypothesis that we have the everyday availability of interfaces, of neuro interfaces that give us access to some states of mind, to some states of our inner self. That is the speculation. But this is also an expectation which, of course, cannot be fully fulfilled. Of course, it was the approach, the method, where stage performed artworks, where we are also using a certainty of a rule-driven approach, instructions, role play, game mechanisms. That's neuroflow is a keyword of earlier installations made with other colleagues. And also the eye expresses it as self-expression. The eye tracking was such a tool developed for neuroscientific use that we used in earlier works, 2017, 2016, together with Stefan Glasauer, who is my research partner in this project. And I kindly asked him to say a few words from his point of view on the devices, on the consumer devices, and on the professional for medical use devices that we are investigating in that project. So what is it that we are measuring? What's it we are playing with? Please, Stefan.
In this project, we actually use electroencephalography, so commonly named EEG. And what EEG measures is basically the kind of combined activity of many neurons at the same time in the brain. So these many neurons, when they fire together, they give what is called a local field potential. And this local field potential is below the surface of the brain and then comes up to the surface of the brain. And there we can measure it. And at the same time as we measure the local field potential, which is then called the EEG, we also measure other stuff like eye movements, eye blinks, muscular artifacts, cardiac rhythms, noise from moving the interface on the head, and so on and so on. So this gives you the observed EEG signal, which you at some points in this presentation will also see. At the top, by the way, you see several of the interfaces which we are using, from left to right, less advanced to more advanced devices. And we are in the first part of our project, we are really kind of focusing on these consumer interfaces. And this was also what we used in the brainwave broadcast.
So here we see the spectrum that is analyzed. It is important that we are using different kind of commercial interfaces at the same time, not depending on one commercial platform or anything. So really seeing what is going out, what is this bandwidth? Is it giving us some information? What do we see here?
This is what we usually think that we want to get out of these interfaces. So these are the different bands, human brainwave bands, which are basically filtered out of the signal. So we have the delta waves and theta, alpha, beta, gamma waves, and so on. And especially interesting, of course, for most of the uses of the consumer interfaces, for example, the alpha wave, which indicates some relaxation and things like that.
Mm. I have to add that Stefan is professor for computational neurosciences at the PTU Cottbus, and also an expert and experienced clinical researchers for a long time at the LMU Munich. So just that you know who was telling you the stuff now. And all this data, this EEG raw data value, the alpha gyroscope acceleration, brainwaves, we were using for a setup where we were already in the first experiments we were launching in May, connecting the different computers, connecting the different data, connecting the live action into a neuroflow or neuroflower where meditation is frequency noise and attention influences particles. It is experience that we had in the development of this. Just one emanation is a second research group is in Zurich, where I collaborate with game designers from the ZHTK University in Zurich. Neurospace Harmony was developed as a prototype, also a sort of performative play. I have to move a little bit further so that you just see we play concentrated.
Margarita is controlling the world. Yes. Yeah. So it depends on Margarita's brainwaves which blockades we as players will be able to remove. So
he is very kind in telling us this. It is only a prototype. And the thing is that we don't want to control the world or the environment in such a game environment. So game design is one strain, performative installation, online performances, these three strains, but also this BCI becomes a tool of self-expression. This is a screenshot from one of the performances we made. This is another one. You see different partners, research members, emerging fellows in this team log in, and our experiment performance consequently has become a tool of artistic research in itself, where we introduce an individual and subjective approach, a contact improvisation via chat with participants, the connection of remote players sending their data via a constant stream forms an environment, a Morse code, a communication without words. We communicate, we emphasize this collective and collaborative element. It is important that it's a tool that we experienced, and in discussing also with our research partner Ruchnell, who will be also speaking in a moment, we developed or analyzed these broadcasts as a tool. Can it be used? Is it a method that can be handed over? can even a toolbox come out of this spontaneous? I have to admit, for us, obviously, it really can't be a relaxation exercise, although we are criticizing the promises of this meditation critical exercises. But for us, so this was the first performance with sound, performing also the hand movement is like a theremin object showing that I interact with the electromagnetic field of the computer itself. Here was the student of the digital arts, Lucas Sabo, sending me messages with his iPhone and giving me instructions, very spontaneous, live-generated sound parallel. Maybe Stefan, kindly say a word how the video clip is now made of all the broadcasts he did since March. Because it's 4 minutes, 6 months in 4 minutes. How we do that, Stefan?
Yes, it's 10 seconds of video for each of the videos which we did of each of the broadcasts. You get 10 seconds randomly selected from each of our broadcasts and put together. So some of the sounds were generated by different, also by different software. So we have sounds by Thomas Wagensommerer, for example. We have sounds that we made with our software, which you see here. There are sounds played from other contributors. And I think you can see this kind of progression from one date to the next. So in the beginning, of course, of these 14 days, this progression was relatively slow. Things look similar here. So this is for 2nd of April.
What we don't see here is that we, from the beginning on, use the live chat. When we broadcast, you also have the possibility to give in chat messages. And at this, then we had a second stream parallel. Thomas Wagensommerer, who is one of the emerging researchers in the team, was processing it. And here we brought the live chat into the window as an experiment. But then we had to struggle with delays.
So you can see that we have now 2 clouds from 2 devices. And the connection broke to one of the devices. So we have it again.
So also 2 different kinds of interfaces. So it means also not one standard, different standards brought down to this raw signal element. And here, let me see how we started them with performative instructions also. That's where also reading sessions, normally no voice.
Where we got already from Charlotta the instructions, right?
And so then at this point, Charlotta entered. Charlotte Root is whom I will address next as a experienced dramaturg, player, designer of bodily interventions, somatic interventions, was also entering this kind of ludic performances. So I think that's for now the point of state. So Charlotte, might I ask you what your opinion is?
Yeah, sure. I think it may be interesting just to say that prior to this, because I'm working on this research project, and prior to this project, I have not been working with neural interfaces. So it's been a learning curve also that has been now actually only taking place
online. And I think that it's very fascinating with, I've been in previous projects very interested in also anything that is sort of going against experience industry. And I think here we have, for instance, this promise of like it says on the package of the Muse, it says meditation made easy. And I think it's very fascinating how this, of course, is meant to be like something that should help you to meditate, and what that actually implies. So what I have begun doing with Stefan and Margarete is to some extent maybe to twist the format of a meditation can be, or a training session. So little by little, we have developed something that also could be attended to as a strange training session. So on Tuesday this week, when we were broadcasting one of those more training session-like situations, then I was guiding Margarete and Stefan through getting like not only aware of time and space, which is normally like the here and now of meditation. This is normally, if you go to any other kind of quick fix meditation score on YouTube, what it promised to do to you is to center you to the situation you're in. And instead, what we have been looking at now recently, especially also with the brain curve development, or the brain, yeah, maybe you want to show what it looks like now. The most recent display of the two brains is actually not exposing one brain, but Margarete's and Stefan's brain together, which is not how these devices are meant to be exposed. And then, yeah.
Ludic performance, exactly. I have to go then to these points. Before that, thank you, Charlotte. Before that, I have to show, and we come back to that point also, that its aim is to come from this online to installative settings. And this was, sorry for, you come in later again when we have this.
No problem.
But having an eye on our half an hour of fame, I have to go on and say, Happy Monkeys. I want to see Happy Monkeys. This AI installation was on installative settings that was in January at the Angewandte Innovation Lab on display. And here it was very critical that the performance, the media part also was covered in a fog of experience, I would say. And so the live performance in itself is a very important, this hybrid installation in itself, a very important aspect. And so here it's a more improvised performance, that's a very much a reaction to what the audience is giving from its feeling, from its experience, but also what the machinery, let's say, is giving as input. So playing with the devices. And thank you also for this video to Ruth Schnell. She was in the audience and experienced how we could then see, as a tribute to our friends in Hong Kong, it is about face recognition and emotion recognition, but the whole performance was then soaked in a fog, because also at the demonstrations, the critical point was that fog bombs were preventing from face recognition. So this is a part of ludic performance which is important, and therefore I stop here this political dimension and hand over with this political dimension to Professor Ruth Schnell, an artist and project partner from the digital art as professor in this research project, and she will build with us also on her artwork and experiences with works about science and the influence of science on society in its political dimension. Please, Ruth.
Okay, thank you. I'm very happy. In general, I'm very happy to be part of this project. I think a lot in it. Of course, I didn't come to a conclusion now, or we didn't come, but for today I was asked to outline my artistic approaches as a possible working strategy for my artistic participation in the NEUROMATIC Game Art project. So now I have a problem. To do so, I would, it goes, to do so, I would like to briefly introduce you to an artwork I realized in the end of 2018. The work is entitled Combat Science Augmented. It was conceived in collaboration with Patricia Köstring, a colleague from the Digital Arts Department. Combat Science Augmented is an installation developed to be experienced with a mixed reality head-mounted display. We use the HoloLens in this case. The built-in special sensors connect the body of the user, the real space, and the virtual space. Like that, the participant is situated in the virtual content and in the real space at the same time. With the HoloLens, the visitor can move freely through the exhibition space. The images shown are from the #FuckReality exhibition in Kunstraum Niederösterreich, Vienna, but the environment can be and also was adapted to other exhibition scenarios or venues. For me as a media artist, one core artistic interest lies in immersion and in the examination of corresponding concepts of speciality. Another one lies in the critical use of technology. What is it meant for, and what can I do with it as an artist? With the functionalities of the HoloLens, we created an experience where many of the virtual elements in the environment are controllable via hand gestures. This is very important because immersion and interactivity then have a very body-referred approach, and it's totally different to the experience when using, for example, a remote controller. But what is or was Combat Science Augmented about? The work introduces us to the life stories of the German chemist and Nobel Prize winner Fritz Haber and his wife, the chemist Clara Immerwahr, who lived about 100 years ago. Their biographies are connected with fundamental issues about scientific responsibility, ethics, and emancipation. Haber is seen as the father of the German gas warfare, whereas Immerwahr was a pacifist and committed suicide after the first German poison gas attack in 1915. For the user, digital holograph-like scenarios unfold within the real surrounding. The main elements are scenes that are played by the two actors who represent Immerwahr and Haber. Different monologues and one dialogue deal with their respective viewpoints onto the purpose of science, but we can also see these perspectives drift apart, outlining the personal and political consequences. The nonlinear script is compiled from original quotes. The figures are life-size. Other elements within the wireframe architecture are text objects, spatial sound spots, and moving images. They bridge the issue of scientific responsibility to today as they deal with algorithms and artificial intelligence. So this was a brief description of the ideas and backgrounds that fostered Combat Science Augmented. Which of the strategies are useful for a contribution to the collective NEUROMATIC project was one question, or my question, or our question. Well, in a next step, we or I would like to implement some of my findings into the artistic research and production process. A first idea could lie in the connection of a neurointerface setting with a mixed reality apparatus such as the HoloLens. Interesting research questions could then be, what effects would this have on the users? Where could they influence each other's perception? Which immersive spaces could be created where real space, virtual space, and brain space meet? All this in the focus of a critical view onto the used technology, of course.
Meeting spaces, that's what we are looking for. I really think so that Stefan has a proposal where we could go there. And so please, Stefan, thank you very much, Ruth. I'm really looking forward to what we will really come up. And I can promise you that some of the points that we will see now in Stefan's last short statement here, some of them will be visible in autumn, and I already invite you all to come to this installation series that we start with Ruth and with Stefan and Charlotte and Thomas and the rest of the team. Stefan, what do we see now here?
So these are traces from our broadcasts, basically. So we have, in the beginning, we didn't do it, but then we started to record a little bit snippets of brainwave activity. This is what you can see here. So these are really raw data from the EEG. And of course, this is not a quality which can be used for kind of scientific experimentation, but nevertheless, this kind of stays as a kind of a documentation of our broadcasts also. But let me go to the next slide and show you where we could go. So one important point of recording EEG is not only the brain waves, but also the event-related, the so-called event-related potentials. Event-related potentials means that they are related to events that happen while you are doing something. So for example, a stimulus pops up and your brain reacts to this stimulus. And so for example, then you can see this P300 wave here. Yeah? And unfortunately, this is very hard to see while you are doing the experiment online, but you have to watch many events, for example. So one feature of this P300 is that it's bigger when you attend a stimulus, which you can see here on this side, than if you ignore the stimulus. And this is one of the main properties which are used for programming active brain-computer interfaces, which you can see here. This is a P300 speller. So you concentrate on a letter H, for example, in this case. And always when the letter H is lighted up, then your brain will make a bigger response. And the computer can see that, okay, he thinks H as a letter. Yeah? Now the next letter will be E. So you concentrate on E, and every time E is lit up, it's E, and so on. So this here, the word help is spelled actually, but I have to go on. So this is an example for direct control or active brain-computer interfaces, but there's also implicit control, passive brain-computer interfaces. This has been coined by Thorsten Zander, a colleague of mine in Cottbus also. Now, and the idea behind the implicit control passive BCI is that you actually can do something with the computer without actually knowing it even. So one of his examples is that you have a task to do. Here in this case, you have to watch this spot moving, and you know that this spot should actually move to the upper corner here, to the red corner. And every time you look at this and the spot is making a movement, which you will see now, yeah, you think, okay, that was correct or that was not correct. You don't even have to concentrate on it. So this was bad, right? So bad. Now it's good. So we have an enlarged activity. Yeah, bad. Good. And so the computer can learn from your brain activity while you are passively watching this. The computer can learn to control the cursor. So we have an implicit cursor control in this case. And I think this is a very promising thing for everything where we want to go. This is another case where we have this kind of implicit stuff. This is the so-called oddball responses. They are known for a long, long time already. So an oddball response means you have a lot of stimuli S and some kind of oddball which pops out. And this oddball, when the oddballs come with a low probability, 0.1 for example, you have a big response in the P300. And you can measure that again. And it gives you an implicit knowledge of, okay, our subject now thinks this is an oddball. Yeah, so you can detect oddballs actually. It's not just that you can give the subject oddballs, but you also can detect what we as participants in an experiment think that an oddball is. So this is an example for a fast periodic visual oddball stimulation. Also very interesting. Here you can watch things and you don't even have to know what's going on. And we can detect that they are oddballs. So for example, here every 400 milliseconds, a face is flashed. And you can afterwards see in the response that people saw a face here. We can see that here, this is actually how it goes. Yeah, so you see, you watch this. Your task is to concentrate on the cross and just watch whether it's red or black. And your brain will kind of pop up when the faces are there. Mm-hmm. Even though the faces are shown only for a very, very short time. And so these evoked potentials can be used for all kinds of things. And I think a very interesting thing where we can really use that kind of evoked responses, these oddball responses, is actually to study something or to look at something, to investigate them, investigate things like social biases. So here you see a couple of papers, and I'm not going into depth here about looking into social biases, so social attributions from face bias, human choices, social bias in terms of memory research, race bias, sex bias, things like that. So we have all these kind of biases, and we often don't know it or we don't admit it, and nevertheless, of course, they are there. Yeah? And we can look at them, we can kind of make them obvious by looking at the brain activity behind it. And I think this is a really promising venue for us to go.
Yeah, thank you, Stefan. Exactly. So this is time for our outlook, and this is the way, the place where we want to go to critically question exactly these biases and to make it experienceable. I would ask each of you for one sentence how you connect with this outlook. Maybe, I don't know, who wants first? Ruth? Charlotta?
Outlook is
where we want to connect in installations with these face recognitions, with these technical devices, and also with these passive interfaces, measuring our conscious, unconscious, subconscious.
Maybe I can say one thing that has turned interesting for me now, which is also coming from my artistic practice in general, that because it started online now, it's been interesting to think how this research also can make visible the online use of these devices, but in installation format, because sometimes this, as you say, like this bias also to formats get more visible when one transfer them to the installation format, where one tries, for instance, strange human interaction that would online be like normal interaction, for instance. So this is one thing I'm very curious in, also inspired from what Stefan just presented.
Exactly. Here we come together. And you mentioned already the direction and outlook, so there is time for one more sentence for you as well. Professor Ruth-Schnell, please.
Of course, also what Stefan showed us at the end, this form of impulse, what we have, I think there is a big, I agree with you, there is a big potential. And what, of course, I would be interested, or this is the most challenging, to put this in an installation. It's from my point of view, it's very challenging, because to turn it into also into an artwork and have the critical impact inside, and but also playing with it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, that's always a delicate, this ambiguity of play where you have two sides.
Mm-hmm.
And
Stefan, you agree on it? Last sentence to Stefan also.
Sure. I mean, I think this will be very challenging. I think the point is here that in this kind of artistic research setting, that we are participants and test subjects at the same time. So we can really experience how it is to participate in these experiments, and we can experience what it means to have your brain waves somehow exposed and interpreted. Yeah? This is the interesting point, in my opinion, and this goes much more beyond what we do usually in science, so that we basically just we measure people and then we publish this stuff. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, super. Thank you so much to also our host at the Angewandte Festival for giving us 5 more extra minutes, which is a luxury in these times of live online broadcasting. I thank the participants of the panel. And yeah, so we go out, and I think we see you soon with the P300 potential in Autumn, parallel to many parallel events in parallel worlds. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Yeah,